Have you ever felt like God was calling you into something, but everything inside you whispers, surely not me? Today's conversation is for every woman who has ever felt unqualified, unsure, or overwhelmed by the weight of leadership, yet sensed that God was asking her to step forward anyway. In this episode, I'm joined by Rhonda Mincey, a purpose driven leader whose story is a powerful reminder that obedience often comes before confidence. Rhonda shares how she was identified as a leader long before she felt ready, how imposter syndrome tried to keep her small, and how one courageous yes to God led to the founding of Hope Springs Africa, a nonprofit that began with helping one family and has since impacted villages and communities in Rwanda. We talk about the date of decision every leader must make, why your past experiences are never wasted, and how God equips you uniquely for the people and purpose He's called you to serve. This is a conversation about obedience, courage, and trusting God, even when the path ahead feels unclear. I'm so grateful you're here, and I hope you enjoyed this discussion. Let's dive in. Do you wish that you could lead your team in a way that honors and glorifies God? Are you struggling to overcome self-doubt as a leader and have a desire to be more confident in your role? Welcome to the Woman of Faith in Leadership podcast. I'm Rika, and for the last decade, I've experienced my fair share of managing challenging employees and teams in middle management leadership roles. I committed my leadership journey to God, and it changed everything. And I'm ready to share everything I've learned with you. Now, if you're ready to lead your team in a way that honors God, grab that notebook and pen, and don't forget your chai latte, and let's dive in. Welcome, Rhonda, to the Woman of Faith in Leadership podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. Why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners and tell us what is the topic that we're going to be covering today?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I am so excited. I am going to be talking about purpose-driven leadership and how obedience leads to overflow.
And I think obedience is a huge topic for us as female Christian leaders because so often God calls us to do things, but it's not that we want to be disobedient, it's the fact that we're scared. We're
Yes.
fearful of what the consequences are going to be. So tell us a little bit about you. Like, what's your background? How did you step into, or even just find, purpose-driven leadership? And yeah, I'm just curious to know about a little bit about your leadership journey and then obviously your story of obedience, because that's going to be a good one.
Yeah, so my leadership journey is pretty much one of where I fell into it, I should say. I am a natural speaker. And I am an international speaker, so I've spoken at different places around the country, different women's events, etc. And I am also a former college professor. So I've spoken, I've taught, and that journey has been so insightful for me as well as inspirational, to the students that I've served. And now I am the founder of a nonprofit organization, Hope Springs Africa. And so that journey came from my being commissioned as a missionary at my church. And so now it has taken a whole new life as far as how to have a purpose driven business and how to be a leader thriving on purpose, focusing on purpose and being intentional.
Wow. So, yeah, that's interesting. So, lots to dive into there. I made my notes. So, I was like, oh, this is a good one. And oh, this is a good one. Okay. So, let's start with the fact that you said you fell into leadership. Now, you're not the first person who tells me that. And some of the listeners on the show have said to me that, they were kind of picked up by their line manager, or somebody saw something in them, or they felt like they had favor, and so that's why they ended up in that leadership space. But that can be quite tricky because then you kind of feel like you didn't earn it, or you didn't feel like you worked for it. And so then that level of imposter syndrome can come in quite a bit. So do you resonate with that, or when you kind of fell into leadership, was it an easy road for you?
No, it's the former. I fell into the imposter syndrome big time because I didn't see myself as a leader to the extent that my bosses saw it within me. And I remember one of them told me, probably, oh my gosh, over 10 years ago now, that he saw me running an international multi-million dollar nonprofit. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? I could not believe it at all. But I tell you this because I so valued his opinion of me. Those words really stuck within me. And I had to recall them later because little did I know I would actually run three nonprofit organizations. And so the words that he spoke over me all those years ago really came to life. And so when I say I fell into it, I didn't see myself doing those types of things, but I learned on the fly and I listened to the words, the wisdom that he had poured into me. And then I knew that, okay, Rhonda, you can do this.
Mm. And so, what would you say was like a key thing of what you did during that time? You mentioned that you kind of, with the leadership role, there were things that you had to learn because you said that, you just took his advice, the line manager's advice. It was a man, wasn't it? Yeah, yeah. And so, what was that thing? Because like it's easy to say, you learned on the fly and you just kind of did that. But if
Mm.
you could give advice to somebody who's in that position, like right now, struggling with imposter syndrome because their line manager saw something in them, but they just don't feel like they're eligible, or they just don't feel like they're good enough to be in that position, what advice would you give that leader right now?
The advice I would give that leader is to heed the advice of their supervisor because apparently the supervisor sees something within that person, that manager, that leader sees something. And oftentimes we're so stuck in our head that we deny what's in us or we're afraid to go ahead and take that step. But when that leader acknowledges that they see something within you, then I feel that gives us permission to go ahead and embrace whatever that thing is. Because
Mm.
now someone is showing us that they believe in the work that we can do and who we are and our capability, the possibilities. And so it gives us license to go ahead and say, okay, even though I don't quite agree with you, I may not believe everything you're saying, but because I value what you say, now I'm going to step into exactly what it is you're saying that I can do.
Mm. And isn't that just the same for us as leaders with our employees? Because sometimes we see something in our employees and we want them to step up. We want them to believe how good they are, but then they do the exact same thing. They also don't believe how good they are or see the potential within themselves. So I think the valuable lesson is that you are trying to equip your employees to step up, but then you need to be able to be coachable and then step up in that leadership role yourself, because quite often in middle management it's that struggle between being pulled up by your line manager and by the people that's above you, but then
Yeah,
working with the people that's like working, that's your employees.
absolutely. I totally agree with you there.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's valuable advice. It's a mindset thing, right?
It is. It's totally a mindset thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
And
as
again, I think,
leaders, sorry,
I'm
you go.
sorry. I'm going to say, I think it also goes to the position, or how should I say it, the respect that we have for that person who's
Mm,
speaking life into us, who's saying that I believe in you. If we truly honor the person's words and their position, then we're more apt to listen and we're more apt to rise up to the occasion.
absolutely. Yeah, because we can get really stuck in our minds about, we really internalize that imposter syndrome. And it's just all lies. It's all lies that we choose to believe. But if
Oh,
you
yeah.
choose to rise above that and say, well, no, the Lord called me into this position, That leader
Mhm.
saw the potential in me. I'm going to rise above my imposter syndrome and I'm going to make a success of this leadership role.
Absolutely. And what I call that is really for me having a date of decision, right?
Mm,
So
nice. I
with a
like
leader,
that.
there has to be a point in time when we choose, as you said, there is a date of decision where we have to decide that we're going to go forward in the thing that we know that God called us to do. Whether or
Mm,
not we're afraid, whether or not we believe we can do it, it doesn't even matter at that point. It's just deciding that God has called us for something bigger, something more, something better. And we're just going to be obedient to the call. We're going to heed the call. And that's it, regardless of how we think, regardless of those voices that we hear. Those
mm,
voices are going to be there. And those voices are there for a reason to deny us from
mm,
walking fully into what God has called us to do. And
mm,
so acknowledge the voice, but make the choice. That is what I would say. The
mm. I
voice is
like
going
that.
to be, but again, we have to choose. And that is a challenge for everyone because
Mm,
when you choose, it has shown that you've decided to stand up. And so now there's going to be other opposition, but that's okay. The main thing is decide and then do, and then the rest will fall into place as you begin to walk into your calling.
absolutely. And it's not going to be, this click of a finger and then it's going to happen. Unfortunately, as leaders, it's actually fortunate. We should actually see it as a positive. You're going to have to build up that confidence step by step. It's not just going to be like, okay, I've made a decision, that decision, the day of decision, or day, I like that. Um,
Yes.
you're going to make that decision. And then every single day after that, you have to keep on making that decision over and over again.
I love it. I love it. But the good thing, the cool thing about that is once you do it, then that second day gets a
Mm.
little bit easier. And then the
Yep.
next day gets a little bit easier, right? Because now you're building your
Mm,
confidence, you're building up momentum. You are happy that you said yes to this big call that God has put on your life.
mm,
And so now you're continuing to go in the flow and to grow in the flow as
mm,
well. And so, yes, step by step, like you say, it's not going to be easy, but that's okay. And we can't
mm,
expect it to be easy
mm,
because if it was easy, anybody would do it, right?
mhm. Yep.
But it's not easy. God called us because He has equipped us to go ahead and do the thing. And
Mm,
so, if we can see ourselves like He sees us with all this potential, with all these skill sets, he created us with the personality, with our abilities to lead, to motivate, to inspire, to just go forward, to stay steadfast, right? Our personality, our experiences, everything that He's given us is for His glory.
mm,
And it's up to us to go ahead and just walk in it day by day.
mm. It's like any type of habit that you're trying to create. It's like for me, something that I really struggle with in this part of my life, and it's something really silly, but I didn't used to struggle like this so often, but that's exercising. I find now exercising, it's really, really tough for me. I might be excited on day one, but come day two, I'm like, do I really want to get up at 5:15? No, but it's that constant decision that we have to make. And if you can get past it, they do say that it takes 21 days to build a habit. And the thing is, if you want to become confident in your own abilities, you're going to have to make it an habitual thing. That's why you have to make that decision for at least 21 days in a row before it becomes easy.
I totally agree with you on that. Every
Mm,
day you have to discipline yourself. And that is
yeah.
exactly what you're saying about exercise. It's the same thing
Mm,
in leadership. It's all about discipline. It's all about showing
mm,
up with intentionality, not
mm,
passively, because
mm,
passively would get us nowhere, right?
mm,
But one thing that I do is I wake up asking God, how can I serve people today? So
mm.
I'm
Love
really
that.
intentional about my day, about serving God, about leading in a purposeful way so that I'm being fulfilled
Mm,
as well as fulfilling my call, shall I say.
mm. Yeah, such a valuable conversation. And I think, you know, that sometimes we just need to hear these things over and over and over again before we believe them. And so I
Mhm.
truly believe that this is one of those conversations that the listeners need to hear over and over again, is that God called them into those roles. They didn't just fall into them. Um, and they were chosen. They were
Yes,
chosen. And it's
yes.
sometimes truly hard to believe. And like you mentioned, you fell into that trap of in imposter syndrome, but
Mhm.
you were amazing. You actually decided, okay, imposter syndrome is not going to hold me back. It's not going to keep me from being a good leader. I'm going to, you know, get up every single morning and I'm going to discipline myself. So
Yes.
that's awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so you also mentioned that you're a college professor. So that's interesting. So I think as a college professor, it's actually interesting. One of my very first career paths that I wanted to take was being a teacher. And then after that, it was actually becoming a college professor. So in South Africa, it's much easier. The pathway to becoming there, it's much easier. Whereas in Australia, you have to have a PhD. So I'm like, okay, I'm not at the PhD stage just yet. Maybe one day, but not yet. I've got young kids. That's not going to be for me. So,
Mhm.
how have you found that being in that teaching role, if we can say it like that? How has that affected your ability? Because obviously, not everyone is lucky enough to be in a college professor role or things like that. But do you feel like being a college professor has really helped your leadership role? Or do you think you would have been able to do it without that knowledge, for example?
That's an excellent question. And I truly believe that being a college professor has significantly helped my leadership role.
Mm,
Um, I implemented and initiated several different programs as a college professor. They were new, they were innovative, and they became the mainstay programs for that particular college. And so just showing and demonstrating my initiative opened up other avenues and pathways, not only for the students, but for my colleagues as well, other professors, deans of the department, etc., really, really took notice of the work that I was doing. In fact, one of the courses that we had was renamed because of the work that I was doing. I mean, who would have thought that, right? So just showing initiative, being creative, those same attributes are the same ones that I carried over in other areas of my career, such as even in ministry, even in nonprofit work, etc. All of those traits carried over into those other areas.
mm. And I think that's a valuable thing to know, is that it doesn't really matter in which career path you followed before stepping into a leadership role. There are always transferable skills, even
Yes,
from being a mother, even from being an aunt, from being a sister, to whoever you are, a niece,
yes.
for example. You can 100% transfer those skills over, because I sometimes, like, I was like that. I found that my leadership, I put my leadership in a bubble, and I thought that it was just so separate from anything else that I was doing, until I realized that, well, there's actually skills that I already have just from working in the education space, for example, that I can actually transfer into my leadership. And quite often I felt like, oh, like, should I really be doing this with my employees? Because, I might be implementing something that with the children in my class, like when I was still a class teacher. And then I realized it's not that it's childish. It's not that it's that I'm treating them as children. It's the fact that that strategy actually works no matter how old the person is.
Absolutely. I love that. Yes, I can totally relate to that.
Yeah, so I think it's important for leaders to think about, okay, what skills do I already have and possess that I can actually take over into my leadership role. Stop seeing leadership as the separate thing, the separate bubble that, like because in leadership, we can quite often feel as if we live in a silo and we feel alone. And
Yes.
especially middle management, I found that I was very alone in my leadership role. Very few people understood.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it brings me to the point of like networking and being with other leaders. And we haven't even gotten to your story yet of obedience. We're having such a good chat about other stuff.
It's
um,
fine.
yeah, did you find that networking was something that was important for you in your leadership role?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I felt as though, as you said, I was in a silo, right? I felt as though I was doing this by myself or no one really understood. So to network with, with others really gave me, I guess, the foundation, the permission, just being surrounded with like-minded women who understood exactly what it was that I was feeling, that really made a difference for me. And not for me, but for them as well. Because they also wanted the connection and they wanted the camaraderie and they wanted to be able to share experiences. And not only that, even to celebrate successes. So getting out of yourself, getting out of the silo really strengthened, I guess, the camaraderie and made, for instance, myself stronger as a leader.
Absolutely. And so you mentioned that you're now the founder of Hope Springs Africa and that you were commissioned by your church as a missionary. So that's very
Yes.
interesting. How did that all come about?
Well, it's truly fascinating because my husband and I were doing the work initially prior to being commissioned by our church. And so we oh my gosh. It started again with being obedient to a nudge, a push, a call. We were visiting the country of Rwanda and came across this beautiful little girl. And just seeing her really tugged at our heartstrings, and we were determined to find this little girl. And when we found her, miraculously, believe it or not, somehow we actually was able to find this little girl. And then when we did, we found out that the family needed so much, right? They were in dire straits. And we proceeded to help the family have food because they didn't even have food. The kids were not in school. It was just a dire situation. And we were due to come back to the US 3 weeks after we met that particular family. When we got back, we paid for the kids to get all of them in school, which were 5 children. And so we got their uniforms, paid for tuition, the whole 9 yards, and to see how they changed from the time we visited them to 3 weeks later, it's just miraculous to say the least. They were truly transformed. Their countenance was shining, whereas before they looked so defeated, the epitome and the picture of hopelessness. And from helping the little girl, then her family, then it extended into her entire village, then 9 villages. But what happened before we got to the 9 villages, that is when we decided to begin the nonprofit Hope Springs Africa, because before then we had been using our money. We didn't care. We just saw the need and we had planned to meet the need regardless. And friends, family, even strangers saw the work that we were doing and they readily gave to the cause. And so we said, okay, now is upon us to really make this official and to really have a nonprofit organization. And now this is when the obedience actually began to turn into overflow, and I'll share that with you. Once we got the kids in school, we returned to the US and then we expanded our program because people were so impressed about the work that we were doing. And so they wanted to contribute. And therefore, we began to start the nonprofit. And here's the thing, I had two other nonprofits previously, and I had vowed I would never start another nonprofit organization. But God had other plans for me this go round. And so we began Hope Springs, Africa, from the one little girl, her one little family, all those 9 villages. And to see the overflow from that obedience is still so incredible. It's just, I don't even know how to describe it really, because even this past March, we went back to Rwanda and then we distributed 150 water filters to one village alone, and to see the people dancing and praising God. We also delivered mattresses, which you would think that was really no big deal. But for the people there, it was a true modern day miracle because there were elderly women, some in their 80s, sleeping on the floor.
Mm.
And then here we come with mattresses. And one of the women, she jumped up and she said, Jesus is alive. And it's all
Wow.
because we showed up truly being the hands and feet of Jesus, right? So
Mm.
it's just incredible. The work still continues. It has expanded into so many other initiatives that we never thought we would even do.
Mm.
We signed a contract with the University of Kigali for a partnership where now we are offering scholarships to college students. And so it has expanded from the village to even the city. So we're bridging the people so that they can continue to help one another. And it, again, it just continues to expand beyond belief. What
Mm.
I have found is my previous work in leadership, even teaching at the university, everything I have done, being an international speaker, it has all come into play with this position here as the nonprofit director. And so to see how God used everything else in my past, from my first day of decision, when I boldly said, God, I will do what you would have me to do, to it now coming back all these years later, still bearing fruit, the sweetest fruit I could ever even imagine. And it's all because, first of all, I was decided to follow his call. Then I actually obeyed that still small voice, the voice that no one else heard, when people could have thought that I was crazy. What are you doing? You mean to tell me you're going to be a missionary? You're going over there to Rwanda, Africa. You're going to stay how long? 3 months? You know? So all of these questions, people didn't understand it. At times, I didn't understand it,
Mm.
but I understood that God called me to do it. And
Mm.
for me, that was enough.
Mm. And I think that's the key is us as leaders, we
Mhm.
don't often we don't we should we should, and I'll put that in quotation marks, be able to see the bigger picture as a leader, because we're meant to be the visionaries. We're meant to be like
Mhm.
what John Maxwell says, see before others see. But
Understood.
quite often we miss it. um, and it's
We
not
do?
obvious to us, but there is one true God that does see the big picture, and he
Yes.
knows that
Yes.
he's got a plan for your leadership and for this nonprofit. Because if you were not obedient, I do believe
Mhm.
that it would have come back and back and back again. God would have praised it and praised it and praised it until it happened. This is something I've said on the podcast as well. If you're finding a challenge comes over and over and over again, the same challenge,
Mhm.
then that might be God nudging you to say you need to overcome this challenge for a reason. And so,
Yes.
yeah, your obedience in that, I mean, wow. Yeah, I'm just astounded by the effects that your obedience had, and that date of decision, the fruit that it's bore, not for you, but thousands of other people, and the impact it's had. And quite often we do say things like, "Oh, I'll never do that," and then God's like, we'll see about that.
Yes, 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 for sure. And then
Mm,
even the obedience, it has opened up the opportunity for my church to also go. So in the
oh,
spring, we have congregation, people from the
oh,
congregation
amazing.
traveling, some of them from for the first time going out of the country. And to think that started with a little girl that tugged at my heart and that I had to find. And now seeing all of this come to pass, it is just so incredible to witness. And I'm
Mm,
so humbled and so honored, that God chose me
mm,
to do this thing, that I was his first choice, right?
mm,
Now, sometimes I ask Rhonda, had you not said yes, what would have happened? Would God had selected someone else? I don't know. But what I did know is that, and what I do know is that there is a window of opportunity for us.
mm,
And so when that opportunity arises, it's up to us to go ahead and say yes to it.
mm,
Whether or not we know the way or not, it doesn't matter. But we're chosen for that moment. And here's the thing, we are equipped with the skills, personality, whatever it is that someone needs. In other words, God can't send you in my place because I have what's needed for a particular audience or for a particular purpose, uniquely made for that particular purpose, right? And so we can sit back and I can say, well, Lord, send Rika.
mm,
And he's like, no, Rika doesn't have what you have, right? And so it's such an honor to know that even in what I consider my inadequacies, God doesn't see me as
mm,
inadequate at all. He
mm,
sees me as an overcomer. And to know that He has that much trust in me to do this thing, oh my gosh, it just really empowers me and fuels the passion behind everything that I do.
mm. And fear will come, and Satan will come and try and attack your thoughts on that. But
Mm,
knowing that God chose you, that's the fuel that you need
mm.
to just to drive you and to move you forward. So
Yes,
yeah, it's extremely valuable what you just said, that you have got something that I don't have. And I think in leadership, it's extremely important for leaders. And I hope that the listeners listen to that. And I actually wrote it down here because it's a very valid point, is that you have something that other people don't have, and therefore God chose you. And it made me immediately think of Moses, because Moses was extremely, he felt inadequate because he couldn't speak. He was a stutterer. And he said, but
yes,
please, why don't you use Aaron? Like, send him. And God said, no, I'm not going to send Aaron, but I will give him to you as a helper. But you're still going to do it. Because
yes,
why? Because Moses had something that Aaron didn't have.
yes,
Mm,
absolutely,
mm.
absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
God will refine whatever that thing is that you think you're lacking. He
Mm,
will provide the opportunity. In my case, I too was so afraid to speak in front of people that it was crazy. You will not even know it to this day. And to think now, here I am speaking internationally. I am the bridge between the US and Rwanda, Africa. And here I was hiding, you know, because I was afraid to be out front, afraid to be seen, thinking, oh my gosh, they're looking at me. They're supposed to look at you. But all of those doubts, all of those fears held me captive for so long.
mm,
And that is why I decided, no, you're going to do what God asked you to do. And truly, my speaking is a testimony to what God has done, when I yielded to Him.
Mm.
And that is the key. And now I'm seeing it being played out in real time. It's just incredible for me to even be able to testify about it, because if you know from where I came,
Mm.
you'd be like, wow, look at God. Only Him, only Him, only Him. And I would just encourage the leaders, to step outside of themselves, because the work that we're doing is so monumental that it's about God. It's about totally surrendering to Him,
Mm.
not in our own strength, not striving in our own strength to make things happen, right? But to truly yield to His will.
Mm.
And then that way He can use us as He sees fit. And I promise you, it would just be so mind boggling at what God will do through you when you totally submit and surrender to Him.
Mm. Yeah. And it all comes down to that date of decision. I like that. I'm convinced that's it's that date of decision, right?
Yes, it goes back to that, right?
Mm.
Because again, as we talked about earlier, it's all in the mind. That is where it starts, that is where it stops. And
Mm.
if we don't get control of our mindset, how we see ourselves,
Mm.
then the enemy has won.
Mm.
It's just it. The enemy has won. And we cannot let him win. Too much is at stake.
Mm.
Our yes is, let me rephrase that. People's lives are contingent upon our saying yes.
Mm. Mm.
And I can rephrase that also to say that I was thinking about going to Rwanda, and I remember saying their survival depends on our arrival.
Mm. Well,
What does that mean? It means that we have to show up, because our yes is the answer to someone else's prayers. And we cannot negate that. We cannot downplay the significance of stepping up, stepping out, and shining our light for the Lord.
mm.
Too much is riding on it. Lives are at stake. And oftentimes, as leaders, we don't see the big picture. We don't see the impact. We don't see the influence. And so we withhold back. I did for years. I'm thinking, oh, let someone else do it. But that wasn't what God had in mind for me, nor
Mm.
is it what He has in mind for our ladies who are listening. God has chosen each and every one of us to do great things, conquer great feats in His name. And people
Mm.
are waiting for us to step up and to show up for them. Not only are they waiting, they're begging, they're praying. And when you show up like that, authentically like that, fully surrendered to God, He gets all the glory for that. And then He
Mm.
uses us in ways that we could never imagine.
Mm. And I'm a perfect example of that. I will share when I was 19 or maybe 20, I stepped into a an employee role where I was an office manager, and I'd never actually been in an office manager role before. It was actually friends of the family who got me on, and so um, there were some decisions that I made that were really not beneficial to their business, and so because they had submitted their business to God. They had and they were really dynamic leaders even in their church. They sat me down and they said the hard things to me. They said things to me that in the moment kind of hurt my feelings, and it was tough to hear. But now, 20 years later, I still thank them. And I did about 5 years ago. I sent them a message and I said, can I just say thank you so much for the way that you dealt with me in that situation? Because it has really shaped what type of a leader I've become. because I can
Mm,
see now that if you didn't have that hard conversation with me, I wouldn't have I wouldn't have stepped up. I wouldn't have improved myself. I wouldn't have been a better person. And they did it so authentic. They did it so nice but firm. Um, because they had a business to run and they had submitted their business to God, and they could not have someone who wasn't willing to do their part. But the effect that that's had on me, I mean, now 20 years later, I still look up to them for the amazing and dynamic leaders that they were to me. So, I mean, I'm a
mm,
testament of that, stepping up and having those hard conversations and being obedient to the Lord, it has a purpose, although we don't know what effect down the line, because we don't always, like you said, we don't always understand the effect it's going to have on people. But 20 years later, I can see that if they had not had that conversation with me,
mm,
I don't know where would I have ended. Would I have become the type of leader I am today? I don't know. Only God
yeah.
knows. But I believe that there
Mm,
was a purpose with that.
mm. Yeah, I so love that, and I can relate to that. That is beautiful. That is
Mm.
beautiful. And I commend you for letting them know the impact that it had on
Mm.
your life. I mean, think how that makes them feel that they stuck to their guns about what was important to them and their business. And now look how you've grown as a result of the conversation they had with you.
And they didn't know that it was going to have that type of an effect on me. I mean,
Right.
but yeah, letting them know that was extremely important to me, because I felt like, as and when it was the time that I did thank them, was because I had stepped into the biggest leadership role I'd ever been in, a director's role, so an executive leadership role, and I truly
Hmm.
felt that because of their example that they set to me, because of the way that they had that hard conversation with me, following Ephesians, where it says, "Speak the truth in love." That's
Yeah.
what they did, and that has had a long-lasting effect on me because of the way that they led their business, and because of the way that
Hmm.
they led me as their very first employee. I mean, to be honest, like, I was their first employee, so they could have made mistakes. They could have, and maybe they did. I didn't pick it up.
Yes.
But they were obedient. I think that's what I'm getting at, is they were obedient. Mm,
Yes, I love that because they had standards and
mm,
they stuck by their standards. They were intentional about having things done a certain way,
mm,
and that is exactly what they carried out. And I think that we as leaders have to also have our standards and toe the line for what it is that we believe in, right? And so
mm.
that is exactly what they did. Yes.
Yeah, and that's amazing. So, wow, that what a great conversation. I made so many notes. I am so excited for the listeners to hear this conversation, because it's a very valuable conversation. So, any last words from you, Rhonda? And then, how can people get involved with Hope Springs Africa? How can they connect with you? Where can they go? Share all the nice stuff.
All the nice stuff. So yes, Hope Springs Africa is, oh my gosh, it is just an incredible organization. And we would love for people to join us, support us. They can reach out. We have a website, of course, hopespringsafrica.org. And so they can just contact us there, write a note of encouragement, join us on a mission trip to whatever they feel led to do would be a blessing for us and for the people over there in Rwanda. And of course, they can reach me directly through my website, Rhonda Mincey, Rhonda, Mincey, Mincey.com. And therefore, they can subscribe to my newsletter there so that they can get weekly updates, inspiration, encouragement about how to become a purpose driven leader and shine brightly for the Lord.
Mm. And are you still doing international speaking? So you're still available for speaking engagements?
I am. Thank you for mentioning that.
Hmm.
I certainly am. So, yes, they could reach out to me again at my personal website, rhondamincy.com. Contact me. And yeah, book me to speak. I've spoken in Africa, I've spoken in Bali, Indonesia, so pretty much around the world. And I love to be able to come and share and inspire women to
Mm.
truly lead intentionally and shine brightly. So yeah, they can certainly reach out, and I'd love to do that. And then lastly, if one wants to know more about how to turn obedience into overflow, I have my personal story in a book that I did not even plan to write, but God did it for me. Oh my gosh, He did it through me. He did it to me from Rwanda a few months back. And it is truly called Refined in Rwanda, where faith finds its fire and obedience turns to overflow. So it is just amazing. Yeah. So they can
Mm.
contact me to get more information about the book as well.
Okay, what's the name of the book?
So the book is called Refined in
Oh,
Rwanda.
Refined in Rwanda. Okay, yeah, you did say that.
Yeah,
Okay, and
God
it's
did a refining. He did a
yeah.
refining. So yeah, it's Refined in Rwanda, where obedience meets overflow
Mm,
and faith finds its fire.
amazing. And is it available on Amazon?
It's available on Amazon. Yes, it's
Okay, so
most
we'll put
certainly.
the link in the show notes for them as well. So yeah,
That'll be good.
that's amazing. Oh well, congratulations on the book release. That's so
Yeah.
awesome that God put that on your heart. And it's an amazing
Yes.
way to share your story of obedience.
Absolutely.
Mm. Well, it was so lovely to chat to you today, Rhonda. I really, yeah, I'm in awe of what the Lord has done. And like, you and I had a couple of tech issues during this interview, but we were just like, nope, Satan's not going to stop this conversation. This is going to happen. So praise the Lord. We finished our
Yes.
conversation. And yeah, it was
Yes.
just such a blessing to have you on today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it and enjoyed talking to you.
Big pleasure. I'll speak to you again soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, would you take 30 seconds and leave me a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts? It would mean so much to me to read your feedback. Also, it would really bless me big if you shared this episode with a fellow leader who might benefit from hearing today's message. And remember, put on the armor of God daily and walk by faith and not by sight. I'll meet you back on Monday for another episode.